All right, Brenden. Let's get into. We're actually going to go back to our series, the outlook. Just want to be respectful of K Dot's time.
Right.
We were with. We finished with Atlanta. Did you have any out of final thoughts on Atlanta?
Um, I guess I would just say, like, going back to Chicago, I think they would have played New York tougher than Atlanta did. And a lot of people are calling for Tanisha Wright's job after the disappointing season that they had, and especially with correlation with Chicago. And I'm not in full disagreement on that aspect. But again, it's an organizational decision, so I'm just gonna leave it up to Atlanta at this point. But I'm just thinking that Chicago would have played New York tougher than Atlanta did.
Yeah. My only thing is with the Atlanta Dream, they have no first round pick in this year's draft because they gave it to us, the Washington Mystics. Thank you, Atlanta. Much appreciated. In all seriousness, they just have the next year the 28th and 16th overall picks. Cheyenne Parker, Tyus as an unrestricted free agent. Ariel Powers, Tina Charles. I think Lorella Kobaja and Maya Carwell are also free agents as well. I think they need to find another score. I think that can help that core with Jordan, Ryan, and Elite and Leash Gray. I just think some of it is with Dan Panover. I can't give him a pass. And I think also too, again, it's different when it was when he was in Vegas versus now. So I get it, with Tanisha in some ways, but I do see some positives. Naz Hillman in the last few games, in the minutes that she was given, she definitely has blossomed. Haley Jones, I'm a little confused on. I still don't really know the. I like. They're doing they're in the same way. That kind of reminds me of Alyssa Peely. It's almost like we don't know what her true position is. You have her playing point guard, and she was not. She's really a forward. Like they don't know what to really do with her, and that's kind of disappointing. I could see Tina Charles coming back, but I mean, she was the highest shooter on the team. I mean, without a draft pick, I mean, free agency is going to be your best bet. So I'm actually a little concerned on what they're going to do. Personally, I think Ariel Powers is another one. Like when Ariel Powers left Washington, she had a true defined role in Washington. When she got to Minnesota, I don't think she knew what that role was. Here in Atlanta, I don't think she knew what that role was. So I'm actually curious to see how that'll look. We're going to move on to your team. Go ahead and get them.
Yeah, so Seattle Storm, unfortunately, had their season come to an end against the Las Vegas Aces. They just lost to a much better team in the two games that were played. Lot to unpack in these two specific games, but the number one thing, or I guess the 1A 1B thing, the 1A 1B thing with Seattle's future and the sustainment. I don't know if that's a word or not, but let's just say for this it is. That Skylar Diggins-Smith is still under contract, and Nneka Ogwumike is a free agent, an unrestricted free agent, only after signing a 1-year contract the last offseason. 1A 1B, you gotta re-sign Nneka Ogwumike to whatever it is that she prefers, and at this point I would say run it back. Try your best to convince Gabby Williams to come back and play another year. Make sure she gets a full year with the Storm team under her belt. But with the specific games of the Las Vegas Aces in the playoffs, it's the same thing that I wrote about with this preview. It's the same thing that I talked about coming into the series and the last game we played against Las Vegas. This team did in the second half, in the fourth quarter of games, a lot of times this year, they would not score many points in a given span of time, and just that's how they lost games. It's because they didn't have any scoring, and whether it's in New York, I've seen it against New York, I've seen it against Las Vegas a couple of times. They would just score in bunches, and they just would result, or they would just stick to, oh, our defense is good enough, so it's gonna work. They're just getting shots that they would usually get, because they're this caliber of player or whatnot, and it doesn't work that way especially in the playoffs, and it frustrates me as a fan and as a person who covers this team when watching a game and seeing what you wrote about actually happen, and not seeing your star offensive player, your cornerstone of your franchise, play a minute in the fourth quarter in game one of an important 4-5 series to go to the next round. And at least I didn't see her. I'm still trying to find out if she actually did play a fourth quarter minute in the first game, and I'm referring to Jewell Loyd. I understand she's coming up of an injury. I understand all of these things to try and defend not playing Jewell in the fourth quarter of a pivotal game, but at this point in the season, I don't care. I don't care, because I'm not trying to jeopardize her health or anything, but I need her out there on the floor when we're not able to score, because it adds a threat to score, whether she's done well in a given game or not, or whether she's done well in a game or not. She's a threat on the floor. As long as she's on the floor, there is a possibility that she could score at will, like she tends to do. And I remember speaking about this with K-Dot as well. One of the reasons why they weren't able to score in the fourth quarter of game one was because the Aces defensively took away NECA, and they did a great job of it. Maybe if Jewell Loyd's in the game instead of Jordan, again, or not taking anything away from Jordan and what she's done for this team, but maybe if Jewell's in for Jordan, she frees up NECA a little bit just to give her a better position to score and get us on the board and make this game go our way. And maybe that goes for the series, or maybe that differs in the series, and we're not talking about the Storm in this aspect. But that accountability needs to be on the coaching, and it needs to be. They need to be held responsible in that aspect. And I found it very interesting. I was not a part of the media availability or the exit interviews, but I did watch the recordings of them, and I'm still going through them. But Noelle Quinn, our head coach, said she was on quote unquote borrowed time. And I asked K-Dot what that meant, and I really loved his description of what she kind of meant by that. But I'm also kind of puzzled by what she meant by that. And I'm at the point right now where I'm not calling for her job. I know a lot of Storm fans who have been in the position to, or had seen her be put in that position where she should not be the coach of this team, but and called her out on it. But as I spoke with K-Dot earlier, like, she has done the most with the cards that she's been dealt, and she's been dealt a pretty hefty hand, and she's done the most with that hand. So I'm not saying she should be let go. I'm not saying that the organization should move on from her in any means. I think that would actually be a bad move if you're going to if your goal is to re-sign NECA. I think NECA spoke about in her exit interview and when she got here that one of the reasons why she picked this franchise was because of the fact that she gets to play under a black head coach who used to, or I'm sorry, a black former player in this league as a head coach, and I think that speaks volumes for the trailblazing that not only the Storm but the WNBA is heading towards or is trying to head towards. So I think that would be a bad move as an organization if you are trying to bring in marquee free agents like a Neko Gumike or someone else in this free agent class. So that's my overall assessment of the Seattle Storm at this point.
Okay, I have some questions, sir.
You should hear me on K-Dot's podcast. I went into like much more of it. This was like a calm rant of what happened at his podcast. Like that's when I went like full rant because basically what I just said, I just was like, I was so beyond frustrated, and I still am.
This was actually Brendan's reaction. I just texted him after the game. Was he okay? Because I'm actually frustrated for you because I was actually in that press and I was looking for you and I didn't see you in there. I know you've been dealing with that dispute and that's something I'm pretty sure I know you're dealing privately. But when I knew when the clock hit 0, I knew his automatic reaction.
I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. This is disgusting. It's disgraceful. It's embarrassing. And I'm ticked off. It don't make any sense. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable.
So, okay. So is Noel quit on the hot seat, yes or no? That's just straight up yes or no.
I think in the eyes of some Storm fans, yes, and I think it's like scorching hot. But in my eyes, no. Like, I completely understand why yes, but in my eyes, no.
Okay.
Like, I think she's done a tremendous job with the cards that she's been dealt. Like I just went over too.
Right. Personally, she shouldn't be on. I don't think she should be on the hot seat. First and foremost,
but if someone said yes, would you understand where they're coming from?
I will understand yes, but you also have to understand that this is someone on management too. I've said this from the jump, and it's actually in this season in the Phoenix Mercury and the Seattle have proven my point. You cannot just go out and buy players to win a championship. You've got to grow. That's how Vegas.
I think New York is proving it too.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to show. For me, when I watched Game 1, and I'm not being funny when I say this. I knew this series was over when NECA said in the post presser when they had that horrendous fourth quarter. I just didn't say anything. That can't happen. You cannot go on a presser and say I said nothing on the bench. I'm nobody. Sky, Jewel, nobody. I get it. They're winded because Vegas. I think definitely from a defensive and offensive standpoint, I think made things difficult for them. But when she said that, I knew from right there. I said, "Oh, this series is over." And you didn't have Ezzy, and Ezzy definitely made a difference. But those 2 free throws also to me were momentum killers. That was the game right there. I think for the most part, I think you guys.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm glad you brought up Ezzy because I want to speak on because when Ezzy, I have the utmost respect for Ezzy's game, and I love her. She's an amazing player. She's an amazing young player still. When she was announced that she was going to play in this game, I did not feel that much more encouraged. Because she wasn't going to fix the problem that caused us to lose game 1. She was because she's not known as a primary scorer. So she wasn't going to fix that problem altogether. Number 2, her fouling. For as great of a defensive player she is, she has a very bad fouling habit, and I think you kind of saw it in game 2, but you've really seen it throughout the regular season. She cannot stay out of foul trouble, and it drives me crazy because of how good of a defensive player she is. If she stops that fouling habit, she's in the Asia Wilson conversation for defensive player of the year. That's one thing that greatly separates those two on that side of the ball. Now, I believe that game 2 would have worked better. That's the game that Ezzy played in. I believe that game would have worked better if you saw more minutes with both Ezzy and Mercedes on the floor, because they could not offensive rebound, or they could not rebound. They allowed so many offensive rebounds and so many second chance opportunities for the Aces. And that was not as big of an issue in game 1 when Ezzy did not play. So I would have, not to say like this team is better without Ezzy. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the lineups, if the lineup shifting or different lineups, different combinations of players would have been better to see and put us in a better position to win if these changes happened. Again, that falls on coaching, that you have to take responsibility in that aspect. I think there's a bigger responsibility in what happened in game 1, but that's another thing that points to coaching and Noel Quinn.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm with you on that. Okay, so for me, when you look at Seattle, and I misspoke. This is 2025 NBA draft. So we have their first round pick. They do. I want to go back. Atlanta, we have their first round pick. They have the 16th and 28th overall picks for next year. For you guys, you've been awarded the 8th overall pick, and you also have Washington's 3rd round pick. Wherever you do with that is totally up to you. Mecca's a free agent. Gabby's a free agent. Mercedes is a free agent. Sammy, Jordan Holmes, and Victoria Vivians. I think you guys had a good year. I think it took some time to adjust, but you still found yourself right there. We both picked them to be a top 4 seeded team. That's a fact. As he has the 1-year extension, Jewel Lloyd and Skylar are signed through next year. More than likely, it's inevitable I think Nick is going to stay. Now, with Gabby, because I think Gabby was a late pickup, but the problem that I have actually with that is she won, if I remember correctly, after the Olympics, she wants a commitment, so she's unrestricted. because she in the extra interview, I'm not sure, Brenden, if you were part of that.
No.
She was very open about the WNBA prioritization rule, which, just for the record, that's something that the Players Association that represents you as a player was agreed upon in 2020. So hopefully, because it's all inevitable that this CBA, as I'm looking right here, dead in the camera, this CBA is going to be opted out. So we know there, because I'm gonna get off that. But my point is that she, you, from my understanding, you guys could core her. But I mean, especially you compare the backs, and that could leave NECA. That kind of hurts. So I don't know what you're going to do about that, but I think that should be a priority, signing NECA and Gabby. Your bench definitely needed some work. You guys didn't use them. I mean, Jordan Horston, she was coming off the bench, but Nika Mule, there's just a couple questions at times. I'm like, well, why is she not going to the bench? And I get it. And then Jewel Lloyd, I think it's still a great player. I think she's still an all-star caliber guard, but we need to have a case study on Jewel Lloyd. I don't know what happened this year. I know she dealt with the injuries, and maybe this offseason will take some time to get healthy, but it did feel like it's disappointing. You guys went a combined 2-12, I saw that said correctly, against Vegas, Minnesota, and New York, especially in the playoffs. And especially when you're top heavy, like right now, you're going to have to cut some corners if you're trying to compete for a championship. So upgrading your bench, I think, for me, is a big priority.
Yeah, I agree. One big glaring weakness about this team was the bench. And like I keep pointing back to this. See, this is where like I show like how pissed off I truly was after game one, because looking on your bench, okay, let's say Jewel Lloyd. Let's say you got me with the oh, she's coming up an injury, so I wanna kind of ease her into game action and all this stuff. Let's say you got me with that argument. Well, you have two scorers or potential to score at will, and actually bring energy in or back into a game on your side with your Wickham and Victoria Vivians. I highlight more Sammy Wickham because Nathan, I was at that Washington Mystics game, and I think that's where this whole thing all started to crumble down, was that damn Washington Mystics game. And it sucks because I was on both rooting interests of that game. If you know, you know. And I just felt like there was no life in a place where I've seen life throughout an entire game in Climate Pledge Arena. Like that last game against the Aces was in that last home game against the Aces it felt like a playoff atmosphere. It felt like a WNBA Finals atmosphere. Without Jewel Lloyd and Ezzie McGregor. But I go back to that Washington Mystics game because I just felt no life in the beginning of that game from the Storm until Sammy Wickham hit a single three to somewhat bring some life into the arena, into the game. And you know, it's what Skylar said in that game. Like, they played down to their competition, and it just kind of spiraled down out of control from that game. I think that was the game where it frustrated everybody, not just fans, not just players, but everybody. And I say all of this because you neglect to Sammy Wickham didn't even see a minute of playoff action. She didn't see a minute. She didn't touch the floor. She had more time on the floor. See, this is the anger that I displayed in the last podcast I was at. She didn't see a minute on the floor. She had more action warming up on the court than she did playing in this playoff series. And especially in a time where you need someone like a Jewel Lloyd, a Sammy Wickham, a Victoria Vivian. And it pisses me off that you neglect to go to any of those options when in the closing moments of a playoff basketball game where you must win or you are most likely going home. And that's where I get frustrated.
I hear you. I think you guys will be right there next year. As I said, you guys have the 8th overall pick. You guys are on the clock. The Atlanta Dream. Because actually, really quick, Washington, we have the 5th overall pick. It's from Atlanta via Dallas. So thank you to both teams. We're going to get into this next team that can swap. New York can actually swap picks with Phoenix depending on how. So I think really New York could technically have the 6th overall pick. And Phoenix has the just for clarity, ladies and gentlemen, the Las Vegas Aces do not have a first round pick. It's forfeited because of that Erica Hamby investigation. So they forfeited that pick. So there'll only be 11 picks. So the Phoenix Mercury would have the 11th overall pick. This is another team. I said it from jump. I just don't think the same thing. For me, it just I mean, you improved. Don't get me wrong. Before you were last year, I think getting Kai Copper, Natasha Cloud, I think they were great. But they didn't knock you off your feet. They didn't put any fear in your body. I knew they were going to be a first one next year. That's not being disrespectful, but you know they were. Inconsistency is not the word. Is the best word I can use.
Yeah.
From just all over, and they could never, and they just never put it together. It just felt like they were not bought in, to it. And you know, for me, you know, DT, you know, if that was her last game last night, Diana, thank you for what you've done for the game, which you will continue to do for the game. BG is a free agent. Monique Billings, which I think was an underrated pickup, Washington, but nice that she was in Washington, is a free agent. Micaiah Herbert Harrigan is a free agent. Natasha Mack, Charisma Osborne, Celeste Taylor, and then Amy Atwell. They got a lot of free agents. But also, this is when you're Nate Tibbetts, I think you did okay. Again, you kind of took over a team that really kind of new ownership, and let's just throw this at the wall and see how it looks. So I think next year, I think with a new full season under their belt, I think get to see what it looks like. I think they definitely need to add some interior defense and size. Because Kai, Tosh, Rebecca Allen are the other ones who actually have protected contracts. BG's not going anywhere. She's staying in Phoenix. Diana Taurasi's coming back for her 21st season next year. Where's my clip? Guaranteed. So unless that changes, because if that was it, I feel like that's not enough for her. I think she has one more in her, but who knows? But you know, I think that's going to be interesting, because if she does retire, that's a big hole in your franchise, especially the all-time leading scorer. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they'll look. I think with this offseason, it's really, really going to be interesting for sure in Phoenix.
Yeah, I think the same. I think it'd be absolutely hilarious given the festivities that they showed for Diana Taurasi and the giving her as many flowers as they could for what she's done for the game, rightfully so. But I think it'd be hilarious if she came back for another year, and they basically have to do it all over again. But yeah, I think that was a great word that you used with inconsistency, because I think that's exactly what it is. And the Mercury at times this season showed the potential of this team. They showed like that they can be a good team, but at times but it didn't stick. Like it wasn't. It, like you said, it wasn't consistent, and that's what you need for a team that is trying to get to the level that the caliber of players on your roster that you signed in a given offseason is trying to get to, and or is meant to get to. And Phoenix just wasn't that every single or like game in and game out. Rebecca Allen, you mentioned her name. She'll be coming off an injury. I think I'm not sure if she's gonna play at all next season or be healthy enough to play next season. That remains to be seen. But it'll be interesting to see if she's incorporated somehow when she does get healthy enough to play. But I think Phoenix is somewhat waiting on DT to make a final decision, but I don't know if they're going to be fully prepared if she does do the inevitable and retire and just hang him up. Because I've seen a lot this through like social media and stuff. But DT is not the one. She's just gonna. It kind of reminds me of Tim Duncan, the year that Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade retired. Like Tim Duncan just announced his retirement in the middle of the offseason. Just did it randomly in the middle of the offseason. I was like, DT's not gonna go out on like a Kobe Bryant farewell tour. She doesn't care about all that stuff. She's just gonna be like, okay, I'm done. That's it, and that's how she's gonna go out. So I feel like Phoenix is not going to be prepared if that indeed happens, for how they are going to fill in that role. Not specifically the production, but like the role that she had on that team is not going to be. They're not going to be prepared to fill that role so quickly. So I don't know what to make of Phoenix at this point, but it was I guess it wasn't an underwhelming year for them. With Seattle, I call our season a success because of the transition from last year to this year. You could say the same thing for Phoenix. They got a lot more wins than they did last year, but as you mentioned, they bought them. So I'm curious to see what they do next offseason.
I agree. Yeah. Phoenix is just it's an interesting team. Last thing before we get into the recaps, that we got to get in a commercial break. The Indiana Fever. I'm just going to be brief with this, and Brenden, just if you want to chime in, please, because this season I have so many thoughts when it comes to the Indiana Fever. I think Caitlin Clark is going to be a great player for years to come. You know how I feel about Leah Boston. She's one of my favorite players. I knew she was going to be something special coming out of South Carolina. I think Nalissa Smith out of Baylor, I think was a good pick. I just think the way they used her, especially in this round, made no sense. But behind that, I really, really it just I feel for these young women. I feel bad for them. Be one, and actually, let me say it like this: there's a lot of growth within this organization that some need to take, and there are some that need a change of scenery. I want Melissa personally where a place where I think she can grow, and I think she is valued. Like again, we're on social media. All the stuff we've heard, they've just criticized Melissa, and I thought she was going to be a great player coming out of Baylor. I just thought, again, they just didn't use her where I thought they would. Aaliyah, I have to give Aaliyah her flowers. All things she went through this year, I had to take a break off social media because the nasty things she got, it's just egregious. And then, just I don't know. I just felt like there were moments, and everything with India, it just made basketball unenjoyable to cover and watch. And like with this year, like when they left, when he lost last night, you just see like the timeline, literally, like this. Now we can like X, Y, and Z. And I mean, for me, for Indiana, they have the 7th overall pick. I think they got a bright future. Kelsey Mitchell is an unrestricted free agent. Erica Wheeler is a free agent. Timmy Fangbangoli is a free agent. Caitlin more like will win Rookie of the Year. That's now no doubter on that. Congratulations, Caitlin. When you start off 1-8, a lot of it was chemistry. A lot of it was figuring each other out. After the Olympic break, they were one of the best teams that benefited from the break.
Nope. After May.
Excuse me. After May.
After the calendar. Come on, man. I wrote about this.
After May. Okay. They, especially with Kelsey Mitchell, they just definitely improved. I think what they nearly, especially they both averaged over 25 last 13 games. You could see the consistent rotation that Christy Sides had out there. Lexi Hall definitely with her defensive prowess, and she surprised me with the shooting. That was my biggest question coming out of college was her shooting. Timmy and Demarius Dantas, they came off their injuries respectfully, but this is a young team. They both have Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark are your, and I would even put if she's still there, Alyssa Smith. Those are your 3 building blocks. I really am kind of curious to see what Kelsey Mitchell's going to do. I think they need to add another 3D, a 3-and-D player like an Alicia Clark as an example. I mean, I would like to see Kelsey kind of test the waters out there in free agency. I mean, she's been really she's really the only one left up until 14, 15, when they had Tiffany Mitchell, Tiara McCowan, Victoria Vivians, and all of them. She's left with that core. And I think also too, like, because of the stuff that's occurred this year, that some players might turn and say, I'm not signing with you. And that could hurt. I don't know. But I think with Golden State coming into the league, and then with the expansion and then free agency, yeah, and it's going to be tough for Indiana.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think you look at this team and you look at the overall like evaluation of their season and kind of how it started to how it's going or how it went kind of thing. And for Indiana, I would call it a success, a big time success, considering they started the way that they did, and then they kind of came together towards the end of the season. Now it didn't work out. I think the Connecticut Sun played with a much more much more fire, and Indiana kind of found out like, oh, this is how the playoffs are played, or this is how the competition is ramped up, and so on and so forth. But I think that's also a good thing for a team this young. Now, when thinking about the offseason and thinking about the experience that you just had in the postseason, yes, it was a short one, but you need to do your best as an organization to keep the core intact, to keep the core playoff rotation that you had intact, or the back half of the regular season, like keep that core intact, because you need more. The more experience you get, the better for a team like this. And I just think that'll only help them. Now, I'm glad that you brought in, or that you mentioned a 3-and-D player, because they have a player on this team who kind of was, I would say excommunicated from the rotation, and that is Katie Lou Samuelson. And that is for the simple fact because, trust me, it's a night and day thing with from one year to the next with her time in Seattle. She brought the 3-point. She's got no D. She has no defense. And Indiana needs a type of player that can bring both on a given day, and I think Alicia Clark is a great answer. But Indiana is I think they are in a good position heading into next season, because of how I don't know the expectations around what they thought or how they thought this season was going to go. And by they, I mean Chrissy Sides and Wendon and the organization over there. I don't know how well they thought they were going to do, but my thought was they were going to be exactly where Chicago is. Not quite there. They're not quite going to make it. Caitlin Clark's going to have a fantastic year because she's Caitlin Clark, and all this stuff, but they're just going to barely not make the postseason. When in fact, like, they looked like a tough out in the postseason. And I bet if you ask Connecticut, I bet they were. I bet they were. And they, in my eyes, they overachieved based off of the year that they had last year and the expectations coming into this year. So I think it's something to build upon. How you do that is a different conversation, and I think that's one that you started. But in my eyes, at least, I would consider this a success and something to build on.
Agreed. Most definitely agreed. And hey, like I said, that is going to conclude this segment of Ladies and Gentlemen.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Another game.
We have the preview of these two games, one final thought, and that's going to conclude this episode, but we're going to take a quick break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we did it with K Dot, but we're just going to be brief with our preview. We're going to start with the New York Liberty versus the Las Vegas Aces. For me, the key for this one is obviously Asia Wilson versus Brandon Stewart. We both know what they bring to the table. I think the matchups are going to be key. It's interesting. I'm curious to see who's going to guard John Quell and Stewie in this matchup because Vegas is kind of small outside of Asia. Kia Stokes, she started in both games against Seattle, but she's liability offensively. I was thinking Meg, but Vegas' backcourt is definitely a liability in this one. So I'm trying to figure out how they're going to make up for that. I think New York can win this matchup if they find ways to expose the matchups. I think John Quell Jones is definitely the key. I don't put Leona Fibich in there as well. But somebody has to guard her. I would put Jackie Young on Leona Fibich. In the front court, I would actually give Kia that task of guarding John Quell. If New York can do those things, I think they can win the series. But I think for my key in this one, it's going to be Vegas's backcourt. Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray. Those three are going to be factors in this. When they are playing well, hitting shots and playing well in the perimeter, it's definitely going to be some great things. But at the same time, again, I said it before, this team especially was getting healthy and coming back, and they're peaking at the right time. I'm picking the Las Vegas Aces in 4.
Okay. I don't hate that pick. Given what K-Dot said earlier, I think it's going to be a 5-game series, and I think every last bit of every game, every last minute of every game is going to be exhausted, meaning used. I think it's just going to be a down to the wire game, almost every game, if not every game of this series. It's going to be as competitive as advertised, I believe. I think, and I'm going to be writing about this series pretty shortly. That article will come out before the first game on Sunday. But there are two big keys that I look at for this series. You talked about the front court. I'm gonna go with the back court here. I think the guard play for either two of these teams is key. Which guard play, or which side has a better guard play? Is it going to be Connecticut's New York's with Sabrina, Courtney Vandersloot, Benaja Waney Hamilton, Leonie Fibich, or is it going to be on the other side with Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray, and etc. And which playoff players do we see more? Is it going to be playoff Chelsea Gray, which we both know is different, on a different level, or is it going to be are we going to see playoff Brianna Stewart, or are we going to see Sabrina Ionescu again, who popped up the last game she played? Is that a one hit wonder? What's going on with that? There's so many possibilities that we could see in this series, which is going to make it much more fun. But the big picture outside of the guard play that I'm looking at for New York side, or I'm sorry, for both the Vegas and New York side, how is Vegas going to handle? How is Las Vegas going to handle New York's defense in their starting lineup? And say that because I like on the broadcast that they had the last game that the Liberty played that the starting lineup of Jonquil Jones, Brianna Stewart, Leonie Fibich. I believe Fibich was in the starting lineup with this rotation. Like the starting lineup that they currently have. That is the best defensive lineup in the entire league, and it's not even close. Like that starting five is the best defensive, like best 5 players defensively on the floor, and it's not even close. So if that does indeed translate to the playoffs or into the series, how does Vegas handle that? How do they handle what New York is bringing defensively, and will it affect them? Sometimes it doesn't affect a team like Vegas, especially in the postseason. And of course, how does the New York Liberty play Asia Wilson, and how do they play that front court? And that's going to be the key of Jonquil Jones and Brianna Stewart. I have the same X factor with New York and Jonquil Jones. I think she's going to be a big X factor in this series. With all of that being said, it like K-Dot said, it's a freaking toss-up at this point. But if I absolutely had to make a decision today on who I'm going to pick, I'm going to pick the New York Liberty in 5 games.
Okay. The Minnesota Lynx versus Connecticut Storm. For me, Sun. What did I say? The Storm?
Yeah, you're trying to get us. You're trying to keep us in the picture, man. It's not a reality. I've accepted it. Now the others around me need to accept it as well, and it's painful. It's painful, man.
The Connecticut Sun versus the Minnesota Lynx. This is going to be the most intriguing matchup.
Yeah.
For me, Connecticut won the regular season series 2-1. These are probably, two of the best defensive teams in the regular season. They've been in this position before. For me, I think the offense is going to be key. Who's guarding Nafisa Collier is going to be the question. Because if you watch this series against Phoenix, she definitely had all the answers. That's the first thing. Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner. I mean, DeWanna had a quiet game 2 until that fourth quarter. I expect them to be the most impactful. Outside of Marina Baby, I need more scoring. Bree Jones did not have the best game, but that to me was that was just not a game for her last night because of the pace that Indiana was playing. Putting Olivia Nelson, Odada out there, I thought was smart. Veronica Burton getting some minutes out there was key. I expect Ty Harris to be out there soon. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, I feel like for Minnesota, I think they do I think everything like Connecticut does. They had 30 assists and 10 turnovers in game 1, and they had 28 assists and 7 turnovers. That tells you the ball movement Minnesota has. Connecticut, if I remember correctly, they really kept them in check with Indiana in three-point shooting in check. They shot below 30%. I want to say it was like around 26%. And that's their offense, especially for Indiana. It's really just like a run and gun offense with threes. And defensive Connecticut's going to make it hard. And I think also to Indiana trying to beat Connecticut at their own game, especially being physical. That's going to wear you out. If they can contain Nafisa, the others have to beat Connecticut to win this series. And I'm looking for the others in Connecticut to beat Minnesota. I'm actually picking the Connecticut Sun in 5.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that. The first thing I was actually gonna say it when K-Dot was on here and we were talking about this series. I get the aspect of, or the storylines and the aspect around the Vegas and the New York series. I completely understand that. It's going to be a fantastic series to watch, and we all understand that everything around that series. I think this series is going to be just as competitive, maybe if not more competitive, than the Aces and the Liberty. Like, I think these two teams are the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other like they're the same person. Like, that's exactly what this series is about. It's in terms of who's going to separate themselves to, who's going to create that offense more. Is it going to be Connecticut or is it going to be Minnesota? I have more faith in Minnesota to be able to create that offense than I do Connecticut. One of the others that I'm looking for on Connecticut side that you didn't mention, sorry, is Dejanay Carrington, who I've loved since her college days. So I'm looking forward for her to create some offense or be an option at least. Marina Mabry is going to be a huge X factor as well, as you pointed out. Bree Jones as well. It'll be a fun series to watch. I think it's going to end in 5 games. I think you picked 5 as well. I'm going to go on the other side, though, and I'm going to pick Minnesota just because I think they play defense at an elite level, and it's just so frustrating to watch. And I'm saying I'm boiling down to this is going to be as competitive a series as the first match or as the first matchup we went into. I'm breaking down who's better or who could outcoach who, which defense can frustrate the other more. I'm breaking down this series because it's so close and it's going to be so competitive. So and these two teams are so evenly matched. So for those reasons, I am rolling with Minnesota in 5 games.
Okay. I like that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude this episode of Big Name Sports Talk Podcast. I don't have one final thought. I definitely want to take this opportunity to thank K-Dot for coming on the podcast. Brenden, thank you for joining me as always. See you in part 3. We might check in some point of this series depending on the time. But this is part 2 of One Mind, One Goal, Road to the WNBA Finals. Until then, I will leave Brendan's Twitter in the description. I believe K-Dot's Twitter in the description. Definitely check out Brenden on World Exposure Report. He's got some great content coming up with the Seattle Storm and the semifinals preview matchup. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.
Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
And I want to thank you. All I want to do is say thank you for everything you do.